Okay, that's it. The blue bar says we're live. Today is Tuesday, the 4th of December, 2018. Patricia's with us and guest, the plain truth. So, evening.
Or Travis, if you prefer.
Travis.
To borrow a turn of phrase from Zachary Zavala, good times for all.
Travis, I'll call you Trav. No, I don't know which one to call you now.
Now I've thrown you a curveball. You do what you like. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Oh, very funny.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get that joke.
All right, what was it again? Say again.
I said it took me a long time to get that joke. It just never sunk in for me. I'm like, what does that even mean? Just don't call me late for dinner.
Just twisted words, isn't it? Just to make you think, I think.
Right.
Anyway, hot off a hangout with. Who were you with yesterday?
I had a great time with Crow 777 and just spent some time with him, asking him some questions, trying to find out where he's at, what he's doing, what he's thinking about. And it's not difficult to get his thoughts flowing. I mean, once you ask him a question, he can talk about anything and everything for quite some time. So it was almost like getting hit with a fire hose. I laughed out loud a couple of times because the information he was giving was just so rich and profound that I'm going to have to listen back to the just soak it all in. So
yeah, and if you sort of think of Crow, of the lunar wave, it was actually when I started, well, Sun and Moon started having hangouts with him, I realised the amount of information he's got and what he's talking about, what he understands. And I mean, I think the last hangout he did say, we're not on a ball, it is flat. He never actually says, I'm a flat earther. But, you know, that he's just got so much great information.
Yeah, and it's all behind the scenes information. It's the kind of information that I think is so shocking and bold and brash that people who aren't awake, if they heard the information, I think it would knock them on their ass. And for me, it was like that when I first came across Crow. I just sat there dumbfounded. I was just absolutely gobsmacked at the information and challenged not to doubt it, challenged not to question it, except to simply process what he was saying. And like he says, vet the information, check it yourself. And I tell you, it's never ending. I mean, if I did that much research, it would last forever.
You sound like you were shocked. You do listen to him on Hangouts, or is it the posts, or is it that actually being on one, like, it's different when you're actually on the Hangout with that person, isn't it, a bit? Is that what you was, because you're actually on that Hangout with him, it just felt different?
No, I guess what I mean is it didn't feel, well, I mean, it felt familiar because he is so down to earth. And he is, I think, approachable in terms of having a conversation with him. All I meant is just the information that he was giving is just, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to think outside of the box. It's a challenge to rethink history, to rethink our education, to rethink our music, to rethink our medicine. He's done so much research and he's presented so much of his findings, him and Jason, that it's just it's
yeah.
You can hear. I'm at a loss for words. It's amazing.
He's very down to earth and he's very calm. And even if he likes to talk, he always has a full stop and then he lets other people talk. He's really nice. He's a really nice guy with massive information.
Yep, very much so. And
he got into the small man side of things. He's into the stars. He's into this. He's into that. He's into loads of things.
Yep. And all of it. I think I listened to today. Jason sent me the trailer that Jason that Jason put together for Shoot the Moon, which is the documentary that's going to be released hopefully in the spring of 2019. And so even the information that Crow put out in that little infomercial, it was just a minute long, but you could tell that this guy knows his stuff, knows his history, and could talk anybody under the table on those topics. I mean, I would not want to go up against the guy and challenge his knowledge.
I think also he says coming to ours, because I'm always very happy when Crow comes on, that he likes smaller channels anyway.
Yeah. Well, it took me a while to get him available for me, but that was one of the things that he did say. He said he does want to be able to spend time with channels that aren't as large and that might not have as large of an audience, just because those are probably people that aren't aware of him as it is. So it's an opportunity for the information to continue to be promoted.
I wonder in the chat room, who hasn't heard of Crow? 777. Anyway, yeah, it's always nice, isn't it? When he's just a nice guy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was one of the first. I'm sorry, I was just going to say he was one of the first channels that I remember coming across a year ago. That as I started to look into alternative truth, his channel came up pretty quick, and I just dove in and kept listening. So.
Yeah, he's very interesting. It's very hard to make a little video about him because you could just put the whole episode in. He's got a lot to say, packs a lot in even in an hour.
Yep. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, why your icon?
You are I'm going to just say it. You're the first person to ask me, and I've been waiting. And every time I post on Twitter, when I upload the YouTube channel episode, it gives you that little box that I think that becomes your hook. Like when it posts to Twitter, you can say what you want in terms of what you want the audience to see. And my question is always, can you guess why I'm smiling? So when I first came into the flat earth truth and started thinking through the reality, the one thing that I understood early on from the channels that I was watching and the way that I was thinking through the issues was the issue of perspective and the way that we see our world. And the Mona Lisa, for some reason, came into my mind because over her left shoulder, or the right shoulder if you're looking straight on, over her left shoulder is the horizon, and over her right, or to her right shoulder, is perspective. So you have perspective in the distance on the left side of her portrait, and then on the right side of her portrait you have horizon. And so you have those two contrasts of the way that we see the world. And when she was smirking, I thought she was just saying, you know why I'm smiling, it's flat.
She knew.
Yeah. So that's one of the.
No one else has asked you before about your icon?
Nope.
Well, there was a first time today.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like you almost think that when you wear a T-shirt that has a message on it that you want people to get, I think that might show how nervous people are to actually bring up that topic and say, so what does your shirt mean? What does that mean? I mean, they might be nervous about the answer.
Yeah, it's not many men have a woman on their profile. Mona Lisa.
Right.
So, as a channel, do you want to explain a bit more about? Well, I think you said you had two, didn't you? Explain sort of more what you're into. I know what I caught on one of your channels, which obviously I made the trailer out of.
All right, so right now I'm about to head over a notorious bridge that might break up while I'm talking, because for some reason going over this bridge is always a sketchy spot. So, can you hear me okay right now?
Just about, although I thought it was going to start cutting out then.
No, no. I mean, it might not. I'm not really sure. It's hit or miss sometimes. Depends on how close those satellites are, right?
How big's the bridge? How long's the bridge?
It takes me about. Yeah, you're breaking up.
Sorry, say again.
So it takes me about 2 minutes to cross the bridge.
All right, not very long.
Yeah, you're coming in garbled, so I don't really want to talk right now, and just in case I get lost in translation. So maybe you can sing a song for us, Karen, while we wait.
No, I don't have a singing voice, but I'll give a shout out to the chat room. Anybody that wants me to shout their name out, write it in the chat room now. I will shout your name out. Takes a couple of seconds for the chat room to catch up with us. So what are you working then, really?
Say that again.
Are you working?
Yeah, I can't hear you very well.
Okay, 1 minute then. So in the chat room, Robin lifting the lid, GoPro, Keith, Globehead, Conan. Hello guys. Richard B. And get Patricia to sing, he said. Oh my god. Shaginzi. How do you say that? I'm sorry. Shaginzi. I probably said it wrong. Anyway, good evening. And Chilster and Michaela and Sea Oddity. Zoo. Marve. Marie. How's that bridge going?
I'm coming right at the very end of it. So,
Hey.
am I coming okay for you right now? Sound all right?
Yeah, you are right now.
Okay. All right. So the two primary channels that I have are the Plain Truth, and that is fundamentally regarding flat Earth, and I try to contribute where I can, and I got some P900 footage that I put up, and I've also put up some videos that I've done where I flat smack during karaoke.
Oh wow! What happened there then?
Well, I take songs, say for instance Bruce Springsteen's "Born to Run," and I rewrite the entire song with a flat Earth theme. So the Bruce Springsteen karaoke song is a call out to NASA, and instead of "Born to Run," it's called "Born to Scam." So it's all about NASA considering us as people who were born to scam with their lies and their deception. I actually think it's pretty good. I was very happy with it. I watched it over and over and over again. I was my big old smile on my face. But I haven't sung that one publicly yet. But
well done for singing.
I'm sorry.
Well done for singing.
Yeah. But there are, I think, 3 others that I've done publicly. And again, I've just taken popular songs that are out there and just reworded them with a flat Earth theme. 2 that I'm working on right now are American Pie by Don McLean. You know the song American Pie?
Right. So
that one, as well as calling out NASA, it's called All of NASA's Lies instead of American Pie, All of NASA's Lies. So actually I'm trying to write it from the perspective of an astronaut who has discovered that NASA has lied the entire time. So he's saying goodbye to all of NASA's lies. And then the song by Fleetwood Mac, or was it Stevie Nicks who did it? I can't remember if she was a solo artist at the time or not. The Landslide. song Landslide?
I'm not sure about that one. I probably know the music. I used to like Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll recognize it. I can't get the tune in my head right now. Not that I would sing it because I'm on the spot live. But instead of Landslide, I call it Red Pill. So yeah, it's fun. So my channel, The Plain Truth, is just about talking about Flat Earth. And then the podcast that I've had for about 3 years is also published on YouTube under my channel Rethinking Revelation. Rethinking Revelation. And it's exclusively focused on biblical interpretation, talking about the books of the Bible and interpreting them. And I have episodes where I've interviewed scholars and I've interviewed friends, and so that's really my background. I've got a master's degree in biblical studies.
So you're a bit of a mixture then.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's interesting because one challenges that I had was to consider the information that Crow was giving, because if you know Crow at all, you know that he has a certain perspective on the source and construction of the Bible, and that obviously goes against my tradition. So I've had to sit there and think, okay, I've got to hear what he's saying. I've got to listen to what he's saying. I've got to run it through and see if there is a there, as he says.
And was there?
Oh, I haven't gotten to it. It's just it's deeper than I can get into right now. But I continue to listen to him. I continue to listen to other channels that talk about it. Marty Leeds is one, and I'm trying to think of another channel in particular that talks about the background, Jesuit and Masonic background to the Bible's construction. So yeah, I haven't done my own personal researching yet, but I continue to listen to those episodes as they come up for more information. The thing about it is that, say for instance, if you have Marty Leeds talking about the numerology and gematria, and then you've got Crow talking about the sun imagery and the zodiacal imagery, all of those aspects of the way that you can read the text is something that I would not be opposed to, because I do believe that there are deeper layers to the text, because the way that I go through my channel, the way that I present how to interpret the text is actually in opposition to the tradition that I grew up in. And so I have actually worked myself out of a job, worked myself out of the opportunity to get hired by any churches because of the way that I approach interpreting the Bible. So I'm a bit of a renegade in my own circles. You still there?
So I didn't know you were finishing then. You were blanking out a bit. I wondered whether the signal, but you're back now. Right.
Sorry. Was it very bad?
No, it's cool. It's fine now. You just blanked out just for a moment, but I didn't think you'd finished.
Okay. I should have said I yield the floor.
It's all right. You're the main guest here today. There isn't too many of us on the panel, so you won't have to fight to get your bit in.
No, I was anticipating just being a fly on the wall. So.
Well, yeah, I did ask psychics to come on, and he said yes, but I didn't manage to communicate with him today. So thank you very much for you coming on.
Sure, not at all.
So what kind of camera have you got then?
I bought a P900.
And you've mastered that, have you? Because that's a work of art in itself.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I actually got it used, and so it came with bare bones instruction, and so it's been just a learning process for me. So terms of
maybe
choosing
the
the right aperture.
users don't feel like that once they master it, but for me, I think I congratulate every single one of them that's mastered those kind of cameras. There's just so many functions on it, so many different apertures and nighttime, daytime, whatever, infinity, all this kind of stuff. Like, just to get, like, by the time I got it where I wanted it to, the whole thing would have just gone or whatever. I would have lost the moment. I think I like to point and fire a bit more, to be honest.
Yeah, when I find an image of the moon or Venus, I try to run through each of the settings and take a number of shots because of how sensitive the camera is. It can pick up things that I'm not able to see right away, so I try to take as many photos in each of the settings as possible.
So what are you trying to capture? So if anybody in the chat room doesn't,
I don't know. It's just anything. It's so actually back in February or March when I was driving up to Massachusetts, I pulled into my stop at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the moon was bright. The moon was about 45 degrees up in the sky. I've got it on my channel if you want to pull it up or look for it. I call it the shimmering moon or the moon shimmer. But basically when I didn't see it while I was filming it, so I was videoing the moon, and later on when I went and looked through it again, I saw something that it wasn't the lunar wave, but it was something that looked like it was a digital glitch or something that wasn't the camera. So, if you move the camera and you bump the camera, you can tell the movement of the camera is physical. Well, this wasn't physical. It was I don't know how else to say it. It was either something that the moon put out or it was something digital. So it was just very interesting. So I made no comments about it. I just made note for whoever was watching, watch what's coming up next, pay attention, and I haven't had anybody.
Many people have filmed the moon wobbling, haven't they? Wobble, 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 wobble. Even Joe Hill the other day had one out, and he put wording on it because the moon's wobbling all over the place. But for me, if the moon is outside my window, I always keep a gauge like through the net curtain. I'm watching through the net curtain where it is, and and sometimes it's moving really fast. You can see it moving with your naked eye.
Yeah, well, my eyes are starting to go south a little bit. I don't know that I've ever noticed the moon with my naked eye moving that with that much detail. One thing that I do like about my footage that I haven't seen, I'm sure it's out there, but I just haven't seen it. And you can only see it if you zoom in. There is an image of what, if you were to look at it, it's almost like a Rorschach, blob. If you were to look at it, I would think that you would come away thinking that it looked like a small dog. And then there's also another one where right next to it is a small cat. But I've never seen it with my naked eye, but I was zooming in on the images.
Hello? Oh, you just muted yourself. Oh, sorry, it just muted you. It just muted you at the very end.
No, I had a phone call come in, so I passed it on. But basically, what I was just saying was that there is an image of both a small dog and a cat on the moon.
Have you seen the man on the moon? There's definitely a face. He looks like he could be
sure.
be Napoleon or something. He looks like that kind of era.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like a sad clown face. That's what it reminds me of, is like a sad clown.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, you could say that. It's like you can see it with the naked eye. Oh, gee. Anyway,
Karen, let me push pause for a minute. I'm gonna have to call my dispatch. I'm gonna be right back. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Chat room. Anybody else noticed anything on the moon? I've seen that man. Has anybody else noticed anything on the moon? So I haven't seen the moon today. It's quite cloudy and rainy, cold, dark, dingy and horrible here in the UK today. But you can't change the weather, can you? It's one thing you can't do. Well, we can't. They do, but we don't. You see an owl. It's upside down. Oh, right. So where are you then, Jeep Girl? So Conan sees an owl. Keith GoPro Flat Earth Darb says he's noticed some wobbles. As Dave. Joe Mama, zoom in and you see the numbers 13, 1, and 3, and 33. Brian says a moon rover. Gonzalo says, I got to watch the moon rise in the morning. It was incredible. Right. Very nice, Gonzalo. Thank you for those words that you put in the chat room at the beginning. And Jeep Girl, what? And you see it upside down? Hello, Dawn. We're on here with the plain truth. He's just had to answer his phone. And he's out working, I think, and delivering. It was upside down during waxing and waning this month.
All right, I'm back.
Nimble horse, and of course Robin. Yeah, they were just saying, some people were saying that they see the numbers 13, 1, and 3, and 33. Others have noticed a wobble, an owl, upside down. The moon, that is.
I'm gonna put in the chat a picture of the cat and the dog image that I found. So yeah, you know, the one thing that I wish that I could do, I wish I could actually you know, commit full-time service to watching the moon, because at least here where I'm at, right now there's a lot of clouds. So for, you know, 2 or 3 days we've got a lot of clouds, so I can't watch the moon, and it's at the very end of its waning phase right now. But about last week sometime, I noticed that the moon was just rising over the horizon at 10 o'clock. And then there was cloud cover for 3 days. And the next time I saw it at 1 o'clock in the morning, so 3 hours later, I was in the same delivery area, and it was on the same degree of the horizon. So 3 hours later. So if you find the description of what I'm saying interesting, you know, so at 10 o'clock p.m., that's what its location was. But 3 days later, the location, we would have thought it would have been at 10 o'clock in the evening again, but it wasn't. It was at 1 o'clock. So I just find that interesting, and I'm not.
What, it's going backwards?
Yeah, something like that. And I had observations of that while I was in California over the summer as well, where within a couple of days, it was about a 3 hour time period, yeah, where the position of the moon at that particular time wasn't the same 3 days later. So
whenever I look at even the sun, they just do different things every day. You know, I've said it before, but if you watch it, it may take you a few days, a couple of weeks to suddenly realize what you're seeing, but it comes in slow, can go out fast, come in fast, go out slow, come in slow, go out slow, come in fast, go out fast. Every day different.
Yeah.
Those there, it's doing one of those things, the moon and the sun every day. Just different. It's all different. It's all different. It's just different. You know, sometimes you're there and you think, wow, it's just like almost hovering. It's like, wow, it's still there 3 hours later. And other days you think, wow, it's gone.
All right, so I've just put it in the chat there for you.
Okay.
I think it was during September, the harvest moon. You see it?
Okay, what am I looking for on this one?
Okay, so to the left, like toward the middle of the picture, you can see those that dark shadow, and then it looks like you have 2 eyeballs and a nose.
Oh yeah, on the right one, it looks like a lion.
Okay, well, yeah,
Or
well,
a
there you go.
cat.
Yeah, I think it looks like a cat on the right, but then to the
A
left
cat
of
man.
that.
He's a cat man.
So then if you keep going to the left, you'll see another set of eyes and a nose, and I think that looks like a puppy dog.
I don't know how to put this in the chat room, the other chat room, because
Right.
it's just the picture you sent me.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think you can do pictures in the YouTube chat. Can you present it on your screen?
I didn't. I'm really sorry. I didn't come on Google Chrome.
Oh,
If you come on Google Chrome, because my computer just opens up on this thing and I just use it. But I didn't
yeah.
come on Google Chrome, so I can't, otherwise I'd share it.
Oh, yeah. No worries. No worries.
Even if I showed it, it's not going to show anything. But I'm sorry, everybody. You have to just take the. There's definitely looks like a cat man there, and then they look like creatures of the wood, don't they?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. But I mean, I would talk about it all the time. If you know, so just the fact that I've never heard anybody talk about it, just makes me wonder how many people have actually seen it. But you'd have to be able to zoom in. Like I said, you know, you can't see it with your naked eye, or
No,
at least I
but
haven't.
some people notice, like Joe Mama. No, someone, whoever that was, put in. Oh, sorry, I can't remember who put in about the numbers and that now. But they can, and then other people say there's this that looks like bits of stitched on it. Um, this like boxes, triangles. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's yeah. The Big Dip is the biggest thing for me, and then it's the moon, then the sun, then the stars for me. The moon's the big one for me. I know that, like I've mentioned this a few times, but on the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, twice in 1 month, I watched that moon come in, go very south, slightly west, but it's going much more south, sort of stop, pick these stars up, almost come north, but in a sort of sine wave, sort of drop them off, and then go faster west, leaving them behind. They're all moving, but then the moon picks up and then it sort of dropped them off. I was a bit gobsmacked when I saw that. I was thinking, I was saying to the person on the phone, how come no one else has seen this? How come no one's talking about this?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's right.
How come they've got a great big observatories? Even none of them have noticed them pick the stars up and bring them across. Oh my goodness, that's what I thought. But I'd have needed a 360 camera, because there's no point me just pointing the camera at it. You're just not going to see it. You'd only see it if I was in a time lapse 360,
sure. Right.
which I didn't have. And I wasn't. When the person told me, I was like, yeah, right. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just couldn't believe it. You have to, if you find out when the Tropic of Capricorn and Cancer is, when it hits, you'll see it happen.
I will definitely keep that in mind.
And the other thing, the Big Dipper for me, is that they actually say that those stars are not a constellation, that they're ones that are not, but they work very well together, and they bend and they twist and they turn round. And, again, it's perspective and which country you're in, and each country, it's all going to be different. But for me, that thing kind of goes around my close. I'm at the sort of more the entrance of my close. It's kind of square with the houses in it, and it goes round and then doesn't quite get to the end of my close. It goes over my house. And this thing twists, bends, goes up in the sky. So star circles can't be true then, because it never picks out the Big Dipper doing all this bending, twisting, going up in the air, twisting around, and all. I've never seen anybody's time lapse show it like that.
Right.
Because if you did, you'd see that one side it's going it's like, say, back up, bucket down. By the time it's on the other side, its bucket's turned around completely different way, and it's doing things. So it couldn't be a complete circle, because it kind of for me kind of goes south north, west east, north south, east west. Goes around corners. And that's what I see. That's what I see here anyway.
Yeah. So I'm just flipping through my photos that I've got on my phone right now. So I'll I know that our audience members can't see this necessarily. So
Sorry, chat room. Yeah, it's a shame you can't add bits like that into YouTube, isn't it? If you could add a few pictures.
Yeah, I've thought of that numerous times, why they don't have that capacity.
They haven't even worked out how to take the link off so the public don't see it yet. So that, you know, if you accidentally share it.
Right, yeah.
They haven't even done that bit yet, have they? They've done loads of other things, but they don't safeguard us. And they know it's a glitch, and they've left it there, which I don't think is very good.
Right,
that
so
means they can eat in it, doesn't it, really? Because they can use that for whatever they want.
All right, so here comes the first image of the moon. That was December 1st. And then this is the second one.
Those are them coming. Oh yeah, I always find them crazy. It's a picture of sort of nearly a half moon, but it almost looks like the moon's been sliced in the middle.
Right. So you can tell that the aperture is different because the color of the moon is different. But so this was simply an hour and a half apart, Karen. So the top one was taken at 4:30 in the morning, and the bottom one was taken at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I see what you mean, because really it is twisting, but the shadow's going with the twist.
Right, it's rotating. So if you could call the top one 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, the next one would be 11 o'clock to 5 or something along those lines.
Plus, when you actually zoom in, there's a little bit of the moon like in the black.
Yeah, right, yep. And you can see the puppy dog on the bottom one a little bit better than the top one.
I don't know if I put my camera on. It'll probably be too. If I put my camera on my phone, it'll probably be too shaky for everybody to see it. I'll see if I can do that so that the chat room can see what we're talking about. But I am sorry, I didn't come through on my Google Chrome. Let's see if they can just see what we're looking at. Sure. Right, here we go. Take bits out of the way. I don't want to see all that. It's a bit messy on my desk. Right, here we go. I don't know if they'll be able to see it. That kind of picture there, guys.
Oh, it almost
That's what he sent me.
It almost looks like it's illuminated, like it is sometimes anyway.
Yeah, just put it on there a minute. So that's what we're looking at. And if I
that image was at 4:30 in the morning. So then you've got the line from. Oh yeah.
There you go. See?
Good. Right. Yep. You've got those little specks of light.
Screen. I've cracked my screen, by the way, so that's all the zigzaggy bits. Can't believe I've never done that before. Cracked a screen before. Bet you loads of people maybe have, but I haven't. And that's the other picture. Again, oh, is that? Yeah, there's bits in the dark.
Yeah, go up a little bit. Go up the line a little bit. I think there's another spot right there toward the. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there.
Yeah.
And then I'll see if I can show them the cat and dog one. Right. So, everybody, let me find it again. Through my cracked screen. Where is it?
I sent you another one if that's too bright because it's orange.
There it is. I don't know if it is a bit bright. Sorry, everybody. I don't think they can see it, but
go to
that there.
Oh, there we go.
The cat person, and that's the other one there. But I don't know if they can see it. They can just see the dots, but they can't see the cat person.
I can see the image. It's a pretty good shot right now.
There you go. Can you see it? See the face there? Or looking like a cat man. Okay, and you've sent me another one as well. So this one.
And that one only has the dog.
What's that?
Right. Right. Look at that.
What's that? Like butterflies on the moon. Sorry, the other bits are the cracks in my screen, but that's not. That's on the picture.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't notice that until I zoomed in right now. That's funny.
No, what is that?
Can you go up even higher toward the? Well, no, that's not as
Oh
big
yeah, I've
as.
got an arrow on it, but there's another one there.
Yeah.
Just where the arrow is.
Right.
I know it's all crazy, isn't it? When you think it's, oh, is it there? But it looks like it's been cut off. Very interesting. Thank you for those.
Sure.
Right. Camera off, guys. Hey, but that was brilliant. Thanks for that. Hope people in the chat room saw that.
But if
Oh,
you want to segue into a different avenue, I've got something I can just mention briefly.
go on then. It's your night.
So I was inspired by Matt Long with the Flat Earth podcast, David Wise, Matt Long. Matt put together this infomercial where he used the scene in the Matrix where Neo's asleep and his computer comes on and they contact him and they tell him to wake up and to follow the white rabbit. Well, in Matt Long's infomercial, you can check it out on Flatworth. If you look for Flatworth and Matt Long on YouTube, it'll come up pretty quick, and it has an image of a longhorned steer, and his channel is Flatworth, which is a play off of the Flat Earth and Fort Worth, Texas. So it's Flatworth, and so instead of the white rabbit that gets mentioned in the Matrix scene, and when it says "follow the white rabbit," Matt Long creates a character called the Red Hen, and so it's "follow the Red Hen." So that was sticking in my mind for a while. Follow the Red Hen. It's like it's the new rabbit hole image. It's the new catchphrase for talking about alternative truth. And so I created a channel that is going to host its first episode with the Crow episode that we mentioned earlier. But the channel is called Red Hen Radio, and it's spelled out REDHENN Radio, and there's an image of a red hen on it. But that channel is going to be focused on research more specifically. So you were asking me earlier if I delved into any of the research that Crow was talking about. This channel is going to be my challenge to myself to produce that kind of research, because one of the things that I asked Crow about, I said, when you do your episodes, do you ever provide the resources that you used to get your information? And he said, no, I don't. And I found that to be true with pretty much all of those channels, Marty Leeds, Crow, anybody that you want to talk about, is that very often a lot of the hard and fast resources that would be primary or secondary resources aren't available. And so that's what's going to be my attempt as I put these episodes out with Red Hen Radio. I'm going to try to provide not just the interviews, but also the resources for someone if they wanted to look it up, so that they don't have to fish through Google, they don't have to fish through the websites or whatever. I'm going to try to give them as much information as possible so that they can do their own research as well.
How often are you going to do that then?
Well, I'd like to probably not take too much off, bite too much off at the beginning. Like I said, I've got 2 large episodes that if I split them into hours, 1 hour each, that I could do one a week and just keep it at maybe one show a week. So, but I really do want the channel to be more than just a slip shot and just thrown together. I want it to be as close to impressively professional as possible.
Oh.
So I don't want it to come off as just some nut job in his basement doing stuff. So
what's your radio show going to cover then?
it'll be everything. We'll talk about medicine, talk about finances, talk about the monetary system, history, everything. I mean, it's everything that we consider that we have to question about our reality. So anybody who, if someone comes on your show and I get their name down or whatever, I'll try to contact them and follow up and have an interview with them as well, because I think that as good as a job that you do, everybody has their own response, their own reaction to the information. So I'm going to ask questions differently than you will, and hopefully that will be able to promote the information in a different way.
Yeah, but it's good, isn't it? People say everybody's open your own YouTube channel, get going, get talking.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, you like talking. You've got a nice microphone, haven't you?
Well, I'm on my phone right now, so it's just the basic earbuds.
Yeah,
maybe
not in the where you are now, but on your computer you've got a nice big microphone, haven't you?
Yeah, I just bought a toner microphone, so trying to get a little bit more of a crisp sound than just using the laptop.
Yeah, and so the other channel, you go into the Bible.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the flat Earth community and the Christian community is that 99% of the Christian community will talk about the Bible being a flat Earth book. That's not my perspective, and I haven't made anything specifically addressing that. But the last, well, not the last episode, but one of the last episodes that I put out on the Plain Truth channel was a combination of Rethinking Revelation and the Plain Truth. And I think I titled it Rethinking Revelation Takes Over the Plain Truth, where my co-host for Rethinking Revelation, John Sedlak, interviews Matt Long. And basically my position that John Sedlak took as a springboard is that in the same way that we critique scientism for simply repeating information that they were told without investigation, and that is the heliocentric model, the way that I put it is that when we talk about, say, for instance, Jesus coming back, Jesus can come back at any moment. If you talk to a lot of the mainstream Christians who are flat earthers, they believe that we're in the end times. That, to me, is the heliocentric model of reading the Bible. And that is, you're not going to get that information from the Bible. You got that information from your pastor. You got that information. You were told that these passages mean this regarding the return of Christ. So the channel, or the episode that we had with Matt Long, was really our attempt to introduce that topic to the truth community. And that's what Jonathan put as a challenge to Matt. He said, okay, listen, take your time, take 6 months and just kind of look at this, but realize that you're getting flat smacked with information that is challenging what you think the Bible teaches, because that's what you've been told it teaches.
Right. So you think everybody's misunderstood what the Bible's saying?
I do, and that it's
So there aren't the four corners and all this kind of stuff in there then.
No, those
stationary.
Right. Yeah, that has to do with the symbolism that the Bible uses when talking about the temple. This is the way I put it. You're familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien?
Can I just say one thing while I just see it in the chat room? It's for you, or for people to know. Joe Mama says, Karen, make sure you tell them that there's a different red hen radio with no space mark between the red hen and radio. So obviously you've got a space, you've got a dot, haven't you, or space?
No, I think it should just be
no space.
I think that there is no space. I don't remember.
Okay, just making sure. There's another one with a space. So when you put in for Plain Truths, Travis's, you put in the word red hen with no space, no dot, no nothing. Is that right?
Okay, I just am typing it in right now, and I've got Red Hen Radio, all one word.
Yeah.
That comes up underneath plain truth. Let me do this again. Let's do Red Hen Radio.
Hey, Mama.
Okay, so it is Red Hen is all one word, and then space radio. Okay, so it's Red Hen space radio, and the hen has two N's. REDHENN space radio. That's my channel. There's 11 subscribers so far. Woo-hoo! Shout out to those 11.
You got to start somewhere, though.
Right, yeah. Thanks
Well,
for making that clarification, Karen. Thank you.
that's right. It was Joe Mama. Thank you, Joe Mama.
Thanks, Joe
And
Mama.
maybe hopefully you'll get a few more supporters now anyway from today, because obviously that's the channel link in the description of this hangout.
Right.
So you'll be able to find it there. What were you talking about just before I changed the subject? But thank you, Joe Mama.
Well, your question was, the challenge is it's the same challenge. I mean, it really is, Karen. So if you're talking with someone who doesn't believe the earth is flat, their question to you is, so you're telling me that millions of people can't be wrong, or millions of people are wrong, right? Science has been wrong. You're telling me that the information that we've gotten about our world is wrong. You're right, right? That's the exact same response when I bring up this challenge for people, when I say, okay, what do you think about this passage? This passage says this. Think about it this way. Well, I've never heard that before. I've never heard anybody say that before. Right? So is that the arbiter of truth? Is that consensus? We go with the popular opinion, or do we take the text at face value? So when you talk about the four corners of the earth, the Bible is symbolic in its language, and that's going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers. They're not going to be comfortable with that, because that makes them nervous that they can't know the meaning of the symbol, and that's not at all what I'm saying. So the last thing I asked you before you mentioned Joe Mama's clarification was whether or not you're familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien.
Right.
Okay, so in the Fellowship of the Ring, there is the mantra about the one ring, right? There is one ring to rule them all, one ring to bind them, one ring to something, and I can't remember the rest of it. But anyway, since I like to hijack previous patterns of speech, I created a description of the way that I would like people to understand the Bible.
Can I ask you something? Can I just ask you something at that point?
Yep.
How do you feel about the fact that we all know that the Bible's being manipulated, and things of, like, even a few hundred years ago, Jesus was not his actual name written like that? And then how do you feel about the fact that, say, the book of Enoch's not in it?
Right. Those are all of the significant issues that I have not been able to spend time, or I guess I could say I just haven't made the time. I haven't made the time to do that. And I continue to listen to channels, though, that do talk about those things. My view of the books of the Bible has changed over the past decade. Even though I'm a Protestant and my Bible has 66 books, my view of what should be in the Bible has changed. And that's another aspect where I wouldn't be able to be hired in many churches because of that view alone. So those are things. My friend, my co-host, John Sedlak, he is the deeper, truer scholar. He will call me very often and say, I was just reading the book of Enoch, man, you got to check this out. And so I get a lot of my information from him that way. I trust his research and his focus on looking up those things. But my question, I guess, if we were having a conversation, is I would ask you, what kinds of evidence can you give me to consider when you bring up that point about Jesus's name, or the Bible's been manipulated, in the past couple hundred years? My question would be, I'm willing to consider that, but what evidence do you have for me to consider?
Well, I think that in one of the in the what's it been done from Hebrew, whichever language, they didn't have a J. They don't have a J. It's been turned into a J when it's been translated. So his name never started with a J.
Right. So that's Greek. So the spelling of Jesus's name in Greek is I-S. Again, this is English. All right. So it's not. So if I was to do it in Greek, I've got to translate it. It's going to be iota, sigma, omicron, upsilon, sigma, Jesus, upsilon, sigma, Jesus. Okay. So in the Greek, it would be pronounced Iesus. Iesus. So that's Greek. So all we're doing is doing phonetics. So Jesus sounds like Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Just like in Spanish, Jesus is Jesus. So I don't necessarily have an issue with the way we take the Greek and put it into English. That's not an issue for me. That's an aspect of translation that everybody has to deal with. If you're going to deal with translation, that's something that you're going to have to consider. So, okay, now I'm geeking out right now, okay, because this is the stuff that I love to actually talk about and do. So when you talk about translation, for instance, we have an English word. It's called atonement. 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 Are you familiar with that word?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That word didn't exist when John Wycliffe was translating the Bible into English. Okay, so when he's going through the Hebrew text and he's coming across a particular idea, he's thinking to himself, okay, we don't have a word in English for this. What am I going to say? So he created a word that tries to encapsulate the idea that the Hebrew is denoting. So if we broke the word down, atonement, it is broken down into three words: at, one, meant. Okay, so that what God does for man in atonement is he makes God and man at one. All right, so you get the play on words there, at one. So there's peace between God and man. If you and your spouse or you and your partner have odds and you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to make things right, and you go make things right so that you are at one, in that moment, you have atonement that has been made. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have that issue when we take otherwise we would all have to simply learn Hebrew and learn Greek if we have a problem with translations, because you're not going to ever have a one-to-one correspondence when you take the Greek and put it into English. It's just not going to happen. So I mean, I could keep talking about it in different areas, but I don't want to bore you.
That's okay. People are listening.
So for instance, another aspect of translation is what we call transliteration, where we take a word in the Greek, like Jesus. We take a word in the Greek because we don't have a word for it in English, and we simply put the English letters to the Greek letters. So, for instance, when we talk about baptism, right? Baptism is actually Greek simply turned into English because the Greek word is baptismos. Baptismos. So you can just hear it phonetically. So all we did was, instead of, like, say, for instance, sarx, the word sarx is flesh. So we don't transliterate sarx because we have a word for it. It's flesh. So we just use the English word flesh. But with baptism, we don't really have a word that's good for that. So we just simply go and take the Greek letters and put them into English letters. And so then that becomes our new word. That's called transliteration, where you take sarx and give it an English word flesh. That's translation. You're taking the Greek word and putting it into English or whatever primary language that you're transferring it into. Excuse me.
What about like the Book of Enoch not being in it?
Right. Well, again, that would be something that would be a part of my research, and maybe I will take a step in that direction to look that up.
Can I say something? I kind of fought that book because I was like, there's the Bible, and then what is all this? And it was something that everybody kept going on about was Enoch. But months ago, I realised that in a sense, that's how him saying how the moon comes through gates. That's how I see it. It's true. Yeah, the sky is like Enoch says it is.
Right. Well, so for instance, again, the word firmament gets thrown around a lot. Okay. The word firmament. I haven't done a study on it to say whether or not it's directly taken from the Latin, but I wouldn't be opposed to the fact that it is taken from the Latin. But nonetheless, it's um, it's still a construct. Your firmament, a firm thing, right? Firmament is a firm thing. Um, but the word in the Hebrew that is translated firmament means a piece of metal that has been hammered out flat. Okay.
Right.
So the problem with that is are we going to read the Bible literally? Because in the Hebrew, it says that God put up a piece of hammered out metal to divide the waters from the waters. That's what it says. So we can't necessarily put our own idea in it and think, well, I think that it might be something crystal-like or whatnot. My issue is, okay, if you're going to read the Bible the way you want to read the Bible, that is literally, then you're going to have a problem with this idea of the firmament because literally it says that there's a piece of metal up there that's dividing the waters from the waters. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, but in a sense, everybody is almost with a big question mark about what it is, and is it the same thing as the dome, a firmament? What some people say firmament, some people say dome. They've got to be different things, haven't they? No, yes.
Yeah, but see, even with that, we have to understand. So, say for instance, if we want to say that Moses wrote Genesis chapter 1, well, he wasn't there when God created all things. So, where did he get his information from? Well, he doesn't tell us. There's no footnotes, there's no bibliography so that we can go research this text or that text or whether or not it was God himself who said to Moses, this is what you need to write down because you weren't there. So this is what it is. So even the person who's creating the story of Genesis 1 has to have more information. He knows something that we don't. And that's where I think the benefit of reading broadly, like with the Book of Enoch, because you're going to have um, additional information there that you can use to cross-check, cross-reference, and analyze the story from a different perspective. So I'm excited about the reality of looking into and understanding the texts that are available for us in the same time period. And the Book of Enoch is one of those texts that I think is important. I just, like I said, haven't been able to spend the time investigating it. I wish I could.
Hmm. So, how much of the Bible have you broken down then?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say that I would say that my view on how to break the Bible down has changed. So I didn't finish my thought on the J.R.R. Tolkien quote. So the way that I put it is this: there is one language to rule them all, one language to guide them, one language to reveal them all, and in the light unbind them. Okay? So we have three languages that the Bible was written in: Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. Those are 3 different languages: Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. But there's another language, there's a 4th language that rules the Hebrew, that rules the Aramaic, and that rules the Greek. And if we aren't familiar with that 4th primary language, we are not going to understand the message. And that language is symbolism. That language is what we call in biblical studies typology, symbolism, or if you want to use the word metaphor. That's going to make a lot of Christians nervous, but that's what my podcast is about. I spend a lot of time trying to unpack that and show and demonstrate that.
So if you said that you couldn't go and they wouldn't want you preaching in a church, what's your difference to a minister then? What's your difference?
Well,
what would you be saying?
Right. I where I mentioned before that Christians today will talk about how they think that they are in the end times, and they look at the state of the world, they look at events, they look at persons, and they think this is what the Bible was talking about. I'm going to stand up and say, I disagree with that, and if you would like to listen to my explanation, I'd be happy to share it with you. So I'm going to say it this way from my perspective, to the best of my knowledge, we are not in the end times. The end times are not in our future. Jesus is not coming back in the future because all of those events have already happened. Now, that throws my Christian tradition and my Christian world into a maelstrom. Maelstrom? Maelstrom. Into a hurricane of just that's throwing a huge stone into
the first one I've heard say that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And so, for instance, one of the reasons why people think that the Bible talks about the end of the world is because when Jesus is talking about his return, he says that the sun is going to stop giving its light, the moon is going to turn to blood red, and the stars are going to fall from the heavens. Okay? So if you take that literally, well, of course it hasn't happened yet, because the sun and the moon and the stars are all still there. They're all still performing their functions. So then that means that the end hasn't come. But the way that I put it in my podcast is, there's a difference between what the Bible says and what the Bible means by what it says. So Jesus said that the sun would not give its light, the moon would turn to blood red, and the stars would fall from heaven. That's what he said. But we have to ask, we have to ask, because that's not our culture. I don't think the disciples had a problem understanding what Jesus said at all. They understood exactly what he was saying. We have to say, what does Jesus mean by this? Because the other part that we can't get rid of in that same text is that Jesus said, all of these things will happen to this generation. Okay? All of these things will happen to this generation. The people that Jesus was talking about, he said, this is going to happen to you. This is going to happen in your time, in your age. So we have to take both of those things into consideration. And when...
So not this age, that age.
That's correct.
I know what they say is, but we know that most things are lies. Have you seen any of Martin Leakey's work? Because whenever he's looking anything up, a lot of these things they're showing is all to do with electromagnetics and things.
I've watched a few of his shows. I have, but I haven't watched him extensively. What are you thinking about in particular?
Well, sometimes I just wonder whether we're misunderstanding the Bible and it's like a code book for things, and we're just, like you said, we're literally taking it when actually it might mean something a little bit different. It just might be all to do with electromagnetics and other things. I was just saying.
So are you suggesting that Martin has approached?
No. He's just looking at photographs and things, but things that we just took as, they're emblem. I can't say the word emblem. I can't say it. We know what I mean. Can't say it. It's always great when you freeze and you hang out, isn't it? They actually mean electromagneticism, and that's not what it looks like, but that's what it means. So I was just wondering, is that what the Bible's doing as well?
Yeah. So what I'm going to suggest when Jesus talks about the sun and the moon and the stars coming undone, he has a political, religious construct in mind. Okay, he's talking to the people of Israel, and their political, religious construct is encapsulated and symbolized by the temple. And the depiction of the temple is heaven and earth. Okay, so we not only have the sun and the moon and the stars that represent the heavens, but we also have the land of Israel, which is the earth. And so those two things are an aspect of the symbolism that the Bible uses to talk about Israel's construct. Okay, Israel's construct was not Egypt's construct. God didn't put Egypt under the construct that he did Israel, or Babylon, or Assyria, or Ethiopia. Israel is the only nation to be placed under the construct that God chose, because simply God chose them in particular. And so then he placed them under what Paul, the Apostle Paul, the Greek word is stoicheia, but we translate that in English as elements or elemental. You could think about it as a principle. You could think about it as a structure. And so what Paul says is that God placed Israel under a structure. He placed Israel under a guiding principle for a certain amount of time, and that time was going to come to an end. And the way the Bible has chosen to represent that end when it comes sounds to us like it's the physical world being destroyed, when, if we're familiar with the Bible, we see that the Bible repeatedly uses the sun and the moon and the stars to represent nations or religious constructs. So basically what Jesus was saying is, things are going to change, and I'm the reason why they're changing.
So what you're saying is we've already had the change.
That's correct.
So what does that mean? Where are we now then?
Well, if you want to use the language of Christian tradition, we are in the kingdom. Okay, we have been given a new construct where Jesus is ruling and reigning from heaven as the incarnate God, who is still human and divine, and that incarnation and that union, if you want to use alchemical ideas here, the union of the divine and the human could only happen if God became man. So in order for man to ascend, in order for man to transcend and be transformed, the incarnation had to happen, and nothing could have happened without it. So once the incarnation happened, that construct that led to that period of time came to an end. That would have been the Old Testament. The Old Testament was what I call the yellow brick road. Okay, you follow this. If you follow this, you will go into the new age. You will go into the kingdom when that period of history comes about. Well, that was Jesus. He brought the kingdom. He brought it in its fullness. You might not think so, but we have to change the way we think so that it's in line with the Bible. Because if you say, well, are you saying that heaven and earth is here now? Are you saying that the new heavens and the new earth are here? Yes, they are. Well, wait a minute. What about this? And what about this? I say, those are good questions, but my answer is going to challenge what you think those terms mean. And we have to have the Bible be our border, our guideline, rather than our church tradition. I don't know.
So we're not waiting for anybody then?
No. No, the transformation has been accomplished by the incarnation, so that
That
okay,
means
so
that everybody's misunderstood the Bible in the first place, then.
well, yeah, but you've always had that problem. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun with that. I mean, if you look at church history from the very beginning, you have church fathers and church leaders that interpreted this way and that way and the other way, and it was all organic. You know, I mean, there's a certain amount of abuse, you know, that we could say is the same when we talk about government. You know, the government can abuse its power, and we would disagree with that. And you have that same expression in the church, unfortunately, because people are fallen, people are capable of being corrupted. So that even though you have Christians in the early church um, that are supposed to uh, imitate and follow Christ, some of them didn't do a very good job of that. They actually followed their own desires, and if you stood in their way, well, then they took steps to remove you. Um, Now, while we would obviously disagree with those drastic negative connotations of leadership, that doesn't take away from the fact that I believe that we are able to understand the message of the Bible. And the way that I'm encouraging other people to think about that is having a discussion about it. Again, like we say with talking about flat Earth, I'm just giving you information. I want you to process it. I don't want you to dismiss it, and you can do with it what you will.
So if the Bible says he's been, what about the people who don't believe he's been yet? You
Not
know,
sure.
other religions, I mean. They don't, even Israel, they don't believe he's been.
Right. So it's almost like I had this discussion with Crow because we talk about what our purpose is here on this earth in time that we have before death and whatever happens after death. So if we are to live a certain way that affects our transformation into the next life, but we don't have that information, so we don't know that we're supposed to um, improve in this life. We're supposed to um, change our character. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to develop. We're supposed to increase in certain ways because that affects the next life. If a person doesn't know that,
Karma, you mean?
I'm sorry.
Karma.
If you want to use it that way, I would say that karma requires um, an entity that is able to adjudicate or to make just decisions. Right? Karma just isn't a physical force or a physical property that is like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So, for instance, if I cut somebody off in traffic, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be an opposite and equal reaction in my life. There might be. You never know. That guy could get out of the car and beat the snot out of me or whatever. So there you go. There was karma for you. But very often, uh, the wicked get away with their wickedness. The righteous aren't rewarded for their righteousness. So karma isn't an equal and an equal opportunity master. It's not always equity. So I understood from an early on that the idea of karma from a Christian perspective is simply what we believe about God. We believe that God does rule and reign over the affairs of men, and that he does carry out justice whether or not we're aware of it. That's simply karma, but we have a personal, individual, omnipotent, uh, all all wise and all good God who's in control of how things are meted out. So my only point was was that if a person so here's another thing that would get me into trouble, and that is I don't believe that the Bible teaches the doctrine of eternal punishment in a place called hell. I will take a bullet for that. I'll stand up for that, and no problem. The Bible nowhere describes eternal conscious torment in some metaphysical place called hell. So
what's purgatory then?
Well, purgatory becomes a doctrine that is taught by the Catholic Church, and this is outside of my pay grade because I'm not Catholic. This is where my friend Jonathan Sedlak could step in and talk about it and give you a better answer than I am. But I'm not Catholic. But the idea of purgatory is an aspect in which the Church incorporated a teaching that I would say, for lack of a better term, forgive me, something that they believe to be true that Protestants don't. And as Protestants, we would say, okay, if you believe that to be true, where does the Bible teach it? Because for the Protestant, the ultimate authority is the Bible and the Bible alone. You can't just make stuff up on your own and say, this is what we're going to believe now. The Protestant says, where does the Bible teach that? Or where does the Bible say that? The Catholic Church uses the scriptures as well, but they also believe that God directs and guides the leaders of the church through experience, through community, and those kinds of developments are organic in that fashion, if that makes any sense.
Right. So this whole thing is about, so basically we've been given the consciousness, and we haven't we're not doing it, basically.
Right. We have to be made aware. We have to operate on the understanding that we have at the moment. And if we don't have enough information, I would say we're not going to progress the way that we need to in this life. I believe that the transformation that we are all wanting, that we all think is going to happen after we die, I think that transformation is made possible by the incarnation. So I'm still Christian in that aspect. That is the transformation and transfiguration and ascension that everybody talks about in cultures around the world, I think still is dependent upon the incarnation. So that the tradition of Christianity and the Jewish religion communicated in the what they would call the Tanakh, rather than the Old Testament. That story, God told the story of the incarnation through the nation of Israel, but that story was to be for the rest of the world as well. So basically, the people of Israel were supposed to be telling their story so that when the incarnation came, people would understand what was happening. They would understand that everything that we've been waiting for is happening and made possible because God has become man so that man can ascend. Without the incarnation, ascension is impossible.
Right. Just asking then, how come everybody's made such a big error on what the Bible's saying then? Because we're not waiting, he's already been.
That's a very good question, but I think it's the same question that we would ask about science and how we can all have not thought about the nature of our world. You know how strong and how powerful presuppositions are. Prior commitments to a system of understanding will blind you to looking at any other construct. I mean, no other Christian, that I know of, if I started talking with other Christians and I say, I don't believe the Bible teaches the doctrine of hell, they would have a big problem with that. They wouldn't be able to see what I'm saying because they have a prior commitment to a construct that demands that hell is real.
But don't you think that's pretty mean if the church, if religion is sort of saying he's coming back, we're waiting for the end day, and that's not what the Bible says in the first place?
Well, but see there, right. So now you're bringing up the issue that we talk about with whether or not everybody's in on the conspiracy, right? So your children's science teacher isn't a part of the conspiracy. Now she's propagating the lie, and to her, it's not a lie. She believes it, right?
Yeah, because she
So,
doesn't know that she doesn't know.
right, right. That's the same thing.
Wow. Well, I've never actually heard your version of it. That actually he's been and he ain't coming back.
Right. And so the whole aspect of what the end times were, or the end days, all of that language is dependent upon the story that came before it. So it was the end of Israel's story. And that's where we see the New Testament. That is, that Jesus was bringing an end to the story, and the Jews who stood against Jesus didn't want their story to end. That's why they killed him, because he was saying, I am the end, I'm the goal. Okay, I used this metaphor before. The Old Testament is the yellow brick road. Jesus was claiming to be the Emerald City. Well, once you leave the yellow brick road, it becomes passe. It becomes a part of the past. You have to move into the future. Once you cross that threshold into the Emerald City, you are in the future. And there were Jews in Jesus's day that said, we're not moving into the future. And in order to prevent the future, we're going to kill you.
Right.
So then the whole return of Christ in the New Testament story was to actually bring judgment on that group of people for their rejection of moving into the future. If you don't want to move into the future, then you're going to find out that that was the wrong choice. And that culminated with the destruction of the temple, which is the symbolism of the heavens and the earth coming undone when the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 AD.
Hmm. So do you go much into the New Testament, or are you in the Old Testament at the moment?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Or do you do much in the New Testament, or are you in the Old Testament?
Oh, no. I am of the mind that we need to be more students of the Old Testament, because the Old Testament gives us the symbolism. It gives us the language to take into the New Testament in order to understand what the New Testament story is. So, for instance, the book of First John, right? So you've got First John, Second John, Third John. The first letter that John wrote, which was a pastoral letter, most people will think that he wrote to Christians. I don't think so. I think that John was writing to a synagogue of Jews, trying to compel them to move into the future. So they weren't believers. He was asking them to have peace and fellowship with him. And then the rest of his letter to them was an appeal for why they should do that. But what he wrote in the rest of First John is dependent upon the story that Jeremiah teaches in the prophetic book Jeremiah. If you don't know Jeremiah, you're not going to understand First John, because there are glaringly clear allusions. John is writing using the language of Jeremiah to make his appeal to Jews who have not put their faith in Jesus. And John is saying, I am begging you to make this move. So the Old Testament is more important as a foundation. Otherwise, you're not going to understand the New Testament at all, because you're going to put your own construct on the meaning of words and ideas. and we can't do that.
Just say that Dennis in the chat rooms put, nothing will help them when Jesus returns. If you've been listening to the Plain Truth, Travis, he's already been and he isn't coming back.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, I've never heard anybody say that one before.
Well, that's because it's not a popular opinion. It's not a popular teaching. Although if you go into the community, okay, so we have a flat Earth community, right? There is a community where there are thousands of Christians who believe what I've told you, and the community is referred to as the preterist community. Okay, preterist, Preterist, preterist. If you speak Spanish, you know that the past tense is called the preter tense, right? The preterite tense, preterite, in the past. So this community of Christians that believe the New Testament is in the past is called the preterist community. And there is a very large community out there that's just as divergent. You know, you've got different views. Everybody thinks this is different, that's different, but ultimately they agree that the New Testament fulfillment has already happened. What I was going to say with that is that when you delve into that community, you will find that this interpretation has been in existence all throughout church history. It's just that it's been the minority view.
Right. Is that in different, like, because, you know, obviously there's like, what about Mormons? Then there's Catholic, Protestant, there's, I can't even think of them now.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons. Those aren't my communities, so I can't necessarily speak to their views. Although I would say this, that they still have a future expectation. Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian community, they still think that there are future events that have to happen because the Bible says so. But as I said before,
Methodist. There's the Methodist Church. There's another part of it. There's
right.
more, but that's another.
Yeah, those would all still be futurists. That is, they still think that there are events that still need to happen in order to bring the world to an end.
Yeah, is it just more fear for the people, if you know what I mean? It's been done that way rather than.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where you get into, I would say that because I was training for the ministry, you know, I was training to be a teacher. I would tell you that I was not of the mind that I was doing it to control people by fear, right? That wasn't my motivation. That wasn't my operating principle. Although,
So how many people have you found that agree with you or disagree with you?
well, you know, there are groups on Facebook that have discussions, just like there are flat Earth groups where they talk about, you know, what's your model, what the azimuthal map or the Gleason map or this, that, or the, you know, cosmic egg. I mean, those are we need those kinds of conversations. We need them. Okay, they are absolutely essential. There are a friend of mine who has a YouTube channel called All Prophecy Fulfilled. Allprophecyfulfilled.com is his website, but that's his channel as well. All Prophecy Fulfilled. He just gave me a shout out in his very last episode because of a conversation that he and I had, and something that I said to him challenged him, but he has come around to believe that what I suggested was correct. I've had conversations with others who are of the same mind. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm saying that the discussion that we're having, we come to an agreement with each other that more than likely this is the better way to understand the story.
And how long have you been doing this for?
I have been my podcast. I think I probably started in 2016. I have over 100 episodes. Um, I have longer episodes. I have shorter episodes. I don't know if you've heard of the term a miniature sode. A mini-sode is a term that's out there for shorter episodes. I called my mini-sodes coffee sodes. Something that you could do in the morning for 10 or 15 minutes. And then I also have tray shots, which are high doses of biblical interpretation that are pretty intense. Um, so I have over 100 episodes, and yeah, so.
When did Flat Earth hit you then?
It hit me out of the blue after the eclipse of last year. I saw a friend of mine who believes the same thing I do about the return of Jesus, and he posted that meme during the eclipse of what a flat Earth eclipse would look like. You know, that little rectangular shadow across the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But I just chuckled at it. You know, I just thought I understood it for what it was. It was a meme, and I went on with my life. Well, within a month, I was listening to a sermon of a pastor who believes the same thing that I do about the return of Christ and future events and things like that. He believes that it's all in the past, but he's a flat earther, and I didn't know it. So I'd listened to some of his sermons, and in this sermon that he talked about, he said to his congregation, "Now you all know that I'm a flat earther." And I was driving my truck, and I was just absolutely dumbfounded. I was like, "What? What did he just say?" And but he took 1 minute and simply described what you and I understand about air flight with traveling east to west and west to east. And within a minute, I was convinced of his argument. I was a flat earther within a minute, and that started me down that rabbit hole. I never really took advantage of YouTube before that, and so I started looking up stuff on YouTube, and then I just came undone. Crow came at me. Dell came at me. I was a huge. I watched Dell avidly um, before the turn of the year. You know, back in January or February. That it was about 5 or 6 months before I even heard of Nathan Oakley. Funnily enough, but um, so yeah, all that to say, I don't think that I would have been willing to change my mind about the flat earth if I hadn't already changed my mind about my views on the Bible. So, you know how it is for a lot of people to make that leap, right? It was a difficult leap to make into the flat earth community because they realized that they had to make a very tough decision. Well, I had already made that decision in my own Christian community. I had already stood toe to toe with pastors, with friends, and had them threaten me with, not belonging to the community. And I was like, bring it. I don't care what you say because that's not what I understand. So I already had to make that decision, and it was a hard decision to make. So when Flat Earth came on, I'd already had that kind of experience, and it was just easy for me to step right into it.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like you heard that from your friend, what, we're flat, it goes in and it's not the end, it's just the beginning. And we have to just be open to most things because especially what shape we are, we can't prove anything right now. We just remain open and we stay together because there's a lot that we do agree on. We're not moving and we're not a ball for a start.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It needs to be organic. It needs to be um, led by compassion and humility, gentleness, and without arrogance. Because I mean, the Martin Kenny stuff is absolutely mind blowing. I mean, absolutely mind blowing. But at the same time, other aspects of truth is out there that's absolutely mind blowing as well. Stuff that Crow does.
It's all mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Martin Kenning had said that a lot of people have woken up, and then it's basically we're sort of in trauma, a lot of us, because I mean, I just where do you process, where do you put all this stuff? And even though as a group we've moved on and we've talked to many people, I still find myself going almost, I can't believe this. It's everything. It's just so bad.
Yeah.
Awful. It's so bad.
Yeah. It was funny because when I was doing some work earlier this morning on my computer, the notification for a YouTube channel came up and it said, "Rivers and streams are not what you think." And I was just like, oh man, this is just another thing, one more thing, So it's just,
I don't think we think about things, because
right.
we were looking up stuff. When you put electricity on wood, it makes those. I forget what they're called now. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit tired, everybody. They do those. Whoosh, it makes it look like they're not called Mantelbrot. What are they called? Lindenberg figures with the whoosh of electric. And then I was driving it was a bit later than the trees had no leaves.
You know what I want to say real quick? I want to say, do that sound again. What is that sound?
Is that what I said? I don't know now.
Yeah.
What it was is the trees had no leaves on them, and I suddenly was just looking at all these trees because we've been doing all this work on trees and stuff like that, and I just went, oh my god, the trees are those Lindenberg figures. They're electric. All the trees are electric. They're sort of representing what an electric looks like. Whoosh. There you go. That was the noise.
There it is. That's it. Right. Yeah.
And it just really hit me. I was thinking, oh my goodness gracious me, because I don't know. There's just so much information to sink in, isn't there? Being a flat earther.
Yeah, it's a completely new education, and I think that I feel the way a student truly should feel when brought into this understanding. It's like, wow, I want to know about that. I want to learn about that.
Yeah, now my head is bulging with information. I feel like I've got like the A to Z of encyclopedia now stuck in my head. It's just it's not a globe head encyclopedia. It's a flat earth encyclopedia.
Right. Yeah, but
carry on.
I was just going to say you're the exact person that I would want to be next to at a party.
Yeah, but we want a different kind of party now, don't you? I don't know if I can go to an ordinary party anymore. They're just going to get drunk and talk about rubbish.
No. I meant one that we would have conversations like we're having right now.
There's just so many things, and oh dearie me. And I bet you in the chat room, all of us, we've learned so much. We've been interested at school. I don't know. I think it would have been better if they'd been teaching all this in school than the rubbish they do.
Sure.
They don't even teach about rotation. We had someone on Conspiracy Cast, and they don't. It's so minuscule. Don't you think the rotation of the Earth would be one of the most important things they talk about? Because if you're here to where you are, the spin's different. It's so important. The spin of what you're on is really important.
I agree. I agree.
Crazy. It really is. And it's just like, it's so far away from where it should be. That's what I think. The vibration, everything most of us can feel out there isn't very nice, and that everybody's so narcissistic and stuck and angry, anxiety, and oh dearie me, I just want to be locked in my house. Stay away.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there any other things you'd like to talk about as you're on here?
No, my throat is actually really dry, and I don't have anything to drink, so I'm like, I should stop talking.
Well, we've been going for an hour and 3/4, so that's still good. That's a good time in a hangout. We've talked about quite a lot today, and thanks for sending me those pictures. And I hope that Marilyn wants to see them. I'm going on a hangout with Marilyn and Cosmic Cat with Dave Murphy later on in the week, so she wants to see them.
Oh, great!
And
sure.
Yeah, I'll show them to Marilyn, and maybe, sometimes you'll come back on Sun and Moon anyway.
Anytime, let me know, because as a truck driver, I'm on the road a lot, and I've got nothing but time, so I'd love it. That'd be great.
Cool. And Mona Lisa. She has to come.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if Patricia's there. If Patricia wants to say goodbye, because she's just had she had background noise. That's why she's muted. I'm not sure if she's there or not. Patricia, if you're there, unmute and say goodbye. Anyway, chat room, thank you so much. What are we doing now?
Bye.
Okay, I said she'd be there.
Right, love you all.
Just
Thanks
to
for
let
coming on.
Yeah, it's been really great. But just to let everybody know, we're on with Martin Kenny and Josh tomorrow. So that'll be a very interesting hangout as well, all breakdown of words. But it's been really great chatting with you, because obviously I think you said you came on before, but we probably didn't chat that much. So it's been very nice getting to know you a bit.
Well, good. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So we'll say goodbye on air, but we'll just say goodbye to each other off air. But everybody, thank you so much. Another nice hangout. See you tomorrow. Mwah.